on, you guys? Josh Lathi out here in Singapore and back on it as always with this Night Out podcast. Thank you guys so much for joining. I really do appreciate you listening in when you get a chance, whether it's on your commute or, when you're sitting at home after a long day of work. I really do appreciate the fact that you take the time and you just sit and listen. Today, I kind of want to talk about the fact that, we sideline a lot. And I've been having a little bit of trouble with this in my own line of work, especially with this podcast, because I have a concept in mind. I have a quote I want to talk about, and I try really hard not to write it out and script it as much as possible, because I do want it to come from my own heart, from whatever intuition I'm picking up as I speak. So it's almost like I'm channeling real time. But I do have this situation where sometimes I get sidelined or sidetracked. The concept actually comes from train yards, where you had to shunt a train or even like a couple of cars, maybe not the whole train, but a car or so off of the main line, so that you can either fix the car, or maybe you had to divert them to a different line, to a different destination. So the fact that there is a sidetrack, that term generally means that you departed from the original destination that you had in mind and you ended up somewhere else instead. Now, for me, that could be all well and good if I was just talking to myself or having a conversation with a friend. But when it comes to the podcast, I try really hard to keep the overall theme in mind. It's almost like the overarching idea. I don't know what you want to call it. This is what they talk about when you do projects and presentations. But I try really hard to stick to the subject matter. But sometimes I end up going off on a sidetrack, and then eventually I will come back to the main matter at hand. Now, recently I did a podcast episode about a Bob Marley quote, that's something to the effect of, if you're not running the race, or when you stop running the race is when you actually win the race itself, because it's no longer a race against other people. It's basically how you better yourself. So it's a lot easier, less competition, less rules, culture, politics, any of those things. And I thought it was really, really great, until I went back to listen to it as I was putting in the intro. And I was like, did it actually make sense though? Because I started in one place, I ended up in another place, and then I've picked another, like a random topic that was kind of similarly related, and I'm not sure if I was able to tie the whole idea together or not. This is part of the problem of not actually planning anything out before I go on these podcast episodes to record and give you the information that it's sitting in my heart at the moment, the idea that's been burning a hole in my head. So a lot of times the sidetrack gets me very, very nervous. Now, for the most part, I don't go back and re-record. I don't go back and cut and paste and edit any of those things. I try to leave it as it is, because at least then you can kind of follow my train of thought a little bit, even if it is sidetracked and rerouted and comes back to the same place later on. Mostly because I don't know where the intuition is going to take me. I don't know where real-time channeling is going to take me. And I don't want to take the risk that the way it came out is exactly the way it was meant to come out, because somewhere in there is something for each and every one of you that will actually strike a chord and help you understand whatever situation you've got going on at the moment, so that you find a little bit of, a glimmer of hope or some nugget of wisdom that might be able to get you through the day. So the sidetrack itself is something that I'm very, very conscious and aware of. The sidetrack a lot of times scares me, but I still don't really adjust the podcast episode, because I do want it to come out the way that it was intended. A lot of times if I start off wrong and it's just not coming out the way that I want it to, I already know in my heart. And a lot of times that means I'm going to stop it before it's even 2-3 minutes long, and I'm going to start over again. Mostly because I feel like maybe the direction that I started off in doesn't actually lead to the point that I had at hand. And even then, it's still real-time channeling. I'm still using my intuition, and I still have the quote that I wanted to explain in the first place, but perhaps I was too angry to say it out loud properly. Perhaps I, had something else pop up on my messages and so was sidetracked then, but I was able to catch it before 5 minutes of recorded time is actually on the clock, and then I can just start over. The fact that I do sidetrack sometimes also is because I feel like, while I had one understanding of the concept I wanted to talk about when I first started, as I start talking, it kind of unfolds in a different way. I really like the fact that I don't adjust these things, because I do want it to come out as natural as possible. Sometimes the message that comes out that wasn't the intended original message is a lot more powerful than I thought it would be. Sometimes I finish up a podcast and I throw it up on Spotify and I leave it be. And it's not until weeks later, when a couple of people have listened to it and fed back to me, that I realize, okay, you know what? I was worried about whether the message was garbled or whether it was offensive. And It seems like everybody's had, like, nothing but good things to say because it hit them where it needed to hit them. Maybe it was a little harsh when I recorded it, but they needed it to be harsh that day because they really got the message, that came over the sound waves itself. So as much as I worry about getting sidetracked, as much as I worry about missing the mark that I originally had planned, the most honest thing that I can tell you is I really still don't try to edit. I don't try to restart or re-record things unless it really is like off on a complete tangent in the first 5 minutes. But with that in mind, I really do hope that you guys will let me know if something doesn't make sense. I welcome the fact that the audience has the ability to challenge me, to ask me questions, to give me more to consider, because I think that's really important as well. I think it's very, very appropriate, especially since I'm out here talking about mental health. I'm talking about everyday life. Yes, a lot of this stuff has to do with me personally and the things I've actually lived through, but that doesn't mean that you may not find something close to home that kind of upsets you. I mean, I've had a couple of people that will get on with a phone call with me later, or even like message me and let me know that, hey, you know what, it kind of hit home for me. It was a little too close to home for me and I didn't like it. But later on, like a couple of months later, sometimes they do come back and they're like, you know what, at the time it was too much for me to handle, but I went back to listen to it and it did make a lot of sense. I appreciate that. So I'm not here to say that I'm speaking the gospel truth. I'm not saying that, I know everything and you just have to listen to me. I'm saying this is another perspective. Consider this possibility. Consider that, other people involved may be out to save themselves. And while they save themselves, they're not worrying about collateral damage. Maybe, in our world at the moment, people are running on the idea that there's only a limited amount of success and you better get it before anybody else does. So that they were raised with this competitive spirit, but it is not a productive competition. It's more like get everybody out of the way and get there first. Whether you do it the right way or the wrong way, it doesn't matter, because you need to get there first. So I understand, and it's because I have all these perspectives that I want to get on this podcast and share some of that information with you. Because when you see that the other person might be struggling too, you tend to be less harsh, or you tend to not want to hold a grudge because it's not actually benefiting anybody, especially not you. So the sidelines, the sidetracks, the tangents, the the original target that I'm trying to hit when I start off the podcast episode isn't always where it ends up. But I'm grateful so far that I've learned to use my voice and to share the information that's in my heart to share and show you the things that I'm noticing, because it's becoming more and more important to me to make sure you guys have options to choose from. I don't want you to have either be diagnosed or either be admitted or either, I don't want them to be only one or two options. I want you to see that you have 4 or 5 options, because then you can choose what's best for you, literally. It's not this or that. It's a combination. You can put together a couple of things that might actually be helpful to you. I don't want you to ever feel like you're painted into a corner, whether it's fight or flight. You don't have to feel like, you only have this problem that you can have, or you can have that problem. It's one of 2 problems, and what is it? What is the term? The lesser of 2 evils. I hate that. I really do hate that. And honestly, I know a lot of us work on the path of least resistance, but when you have the lesser of 2 evils concept in your head, that means that there's no room for joy. And I would like to believe that there's always room for joy. There's always room for like a hybrid version of those options, so that you can at least get a little bit of peace as you go on this journey, this hero's journey that you're on, to discover who you really are and how you should live for yourself, instead of trying to pander to the crowds and please people everywhere you go. So today, it's a little bit more about me explaining because I feel like the last episode was a little here and a little there and a little everywhere, but I'm hoping still that it made enough sense to you guys and gave you enough different variations or very varied scenarios that this concept could be implied in. Because honestly, it's a big concept. And we're always told that, this is the way things are and this is the way you have to do things in order to succeed. Singapore has their own way. Australia has its own way. The US has its own way. Public school versus private school was different in the US. College versus high school was different in the US. We had ACTs and SATs, and it depended on what kind of school you wanted to get into, where you chose, which one of those scores you're going to submit to all of your college applications. Writing essays, submitting video essays now, how to run a marketing business, how to succeed on social media while you're running a business, how to even get online as a business at the moment. Like all of those things have their own way of doing, own way of success, their own path to success. And it really does depend on you. You are the biggest variable in all of these scenarios. So that's why I don't like the this or that kind of situation where you only have this option or that option. It irks my nerves, I'm telling you right now. So for all of you who listen, for all of you who feedback to me, who comment, I really, really do appreciate you guys. Keep doing that, please. And if I am ever out of line, correct me. It's okay. I'm still learning as I go along as well. I don't have all the answers, but I'm trying my best to manage. And as I figure some things out, I think it's my duty to share. So that's all I'm doing at the capacity that I possibly can. And I'm constantly putting myself in situations to learn new things, to encounter different people and learn about different cultures, because every culture has this gem or two in there that could be helpful to the rest of the world if we just knew that they existed. So this is where I'm coming from. And sidetrack or not, I mean you the best. I want you to have options. I want you to live your most satisfying, fulfilling life possible, because we only have this one shot at it. So as always, if you have any questions, comments, drop them in the comments below. I do always want to hear from you. Good, bad, ugly, I don't care. I want to hear from you. But in the meantime, try your best to enjoy life. Really. Do something for you every day. Make sure you make time for yourself every day on purpose. Become who you want to be on purpose. And that's basically all I want for any of you, including my daughter. I love you guys. I'll catch you later. Bye.